What kind of neighbor demands you pay $5,000 for their mistake, then threatens to ruin your life when you refuse? The kind who runs the HOA in Willow Creek, a pristine suburban enclave where every lawn is manicured and every mailbox matches. I moved here 2 years ago, seeking a quiet life after a messy divorce. My name's Ethan Caldwell, a freelance electrician with a knack for fixing problems, except, apparently, the ones brewing in my own backyard. It started with a letter slipped under my door, stamped with the HOA's embossed logo, claiming I owed $5,000 for unauthorized electrical usage. The accusation? My backyard workshop, where I tinker with old radios and repair neighbors' appliances, had somehow spiked the community's power grid. The truth? I'd been meticulous about my usage, even installing a submeter to track every watt. But the HOA led by Karen Whitmore didn't care about facts. She wanted compliance and she wanted it now. Karen was the queen of Willow Creek, a woman in her late 50s with a perm as tight as her grip on the neighborhood. She patrolled the streets in her golf cart, her clipboard a scepter, noting every infraction: too tall grass, unapproved paint colors, or in my case a workshop she deemed unsightly. The letter wasn't a request. It was a demand signed by Karen and her board of loyalists. Pay up or face fines, liens, or worse. I laughed it off at first. A $5,000 bill for a few light bulbs and a soldering iron? Absurd. I called a meeting with the HOA expecting a quick resolution. Instead, I walked into a lion's den. Karen sat at the head of the community center's conference table, flanked by her vice president, Tom, a retired banker with a permanent scowl, and Linda, a busybody who documented every neighborhood slight in her spiral notebook. They presented a spreadsheet, claiming my workshop's excessive draw had caused a surge in the grid's costs, passed on to the community. I showed them my submeter readings, steady, low, unremarkable. Karen didn't even glance at them. "Rules are rules, Mr. Caldwell," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "If you don't pay, we'll escalate." Escalate? I dealt with bullies before, but this was different. This was personal. I spent the next week digging into the HOA's claims, poring over utility records and my own logs. The numbers didn't add up. My workshop used less power than Karen's nightly Christmas light display, which lit up her house like a Vegas casino. Then I found it. A discrepancy in the community's master meter readings, buried in a utility report Karen hadn't bothered to hide. The surge wasn't from my workshop. It was from the community clubhouse, where Karen had installed a massive new HVAC system without proper permits. The cost had been quietly distributed across all residents' bills, but she'd pinned the blame on me, the outsider, the guy who didn't bow to her reign. I confronted her at her pristine colonial home, records in hand. She stood on her porch, arms crossed, her smile as cold as the February air. "You're mistaken, Ethan," she said. "And if you keep pushing, you'll regret it." Regret it? I wasn't the one who should be worried. I'd spent years learning the grid, how power flows, how systems connect. Karen had picked the wrong guy to mess with. I started asking questions around the neighborhood quietly. Most residents were too scared to talk, but old Mr. Jenkins, who'd lived here since the subdivision was built, let slip that Karen had a history of targeting troublemakers. Last year, she'd fined a single mom $2,000 for a cracked driveway, forcing her to sell her home. The year before, she'd pushed a retired veteran into foreclosure over unpaid special assessments. Karen wasn't just a control freak. She was a predator. I decided then, I wasn't paying a dime. But I wasn't going to just fight her, I was going to expose her. I spent nights in my workshop, not tinkering with radios but mapping the neighborhood's electrical grid. Willow Creek's power was fed through a single substation, a gray box tucked behind the clubhouse. As an electrician, I'd worked on similar systems. I knew their weaknesses. Karen thought she could bully me into submission, but she didn't know who she was dealing with. I wasn't just an electrician. I was a man with nothing left to lose. My plan was simple. If she wanted to play dirty, I'd show her what real power looked like. I cut the grid, not permanently, just long enough to make a point. Let her sit in the dark, wondering who was in control. But first I needed proof, something undeniable to show the neighborhood what she'd done. I started by hacking into the HOA's poorly secured server. Karen's idea of cybersecurity was a password like Willow Creek 123. There I found emails between her and the utility company, confirming the HVAC installation and the cost overrun. She'd known the truth all along. Armed with this, I printed flyers detailing her scam and slipped them into every mailbox in Willow Creek. The next morning, the neighborhood buzzed with whispers. People stopped me on the street, shocked but hesitant. Karen's grip was tight and fear lingered. Still, I saw cracks forming. A few neighbors, Mr. Jenkins, the young couple across the street, started asking questions. Karen noticed. Her next move was swift and brutal. A new letter, this time threatening to sue me for defamation unless I retracted everything and paid the $5,000, plus legal fees. She'd underestimated me again. The night before the HOA's emergency meeting, where Karen planned to rally her loyalists and crush me, I made my move. The substation was unguarded, its lock rusted from neglect. I didn't need to destroy anything, just reroute a few circuits, flip a few switches. The neighborhood would go dark for a few hours, just long enough to make them listen. As I worked under the cover of midnight, my hands steady despite the adrenaline, I felt a strange calm. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every neighbor Karen had bullied, every life she'd upended. The grid hummed, then fell silent. Willow Creek plunged into darkness. The blackout hit at 1:03 a.m., a silent rebellion that swallowed Willow Creek in shadow. Streetlights flickered out, porch lights died, and the hum of air conditioners fell mute. I stood by the substation, my breath visible in the cold, watching the neighborhood sleep under a starless sky. My heart pounded, not from fear but from the weight of what I'd done. I crossed a line, but it felt right. Karen's empire was built on control, and I just yanked the plug. I slipped back to my house, the only one with a faint glow. My workshop ran on a small generator, a backup I'd rigged years ago. By morning, the neighborhood was chaos. Phones buzzed with group chats, neighbors huddled on driveways, and Karen's golf cart screeched to a stop outside my house. She didn't knock. She pounded. Ethan Caldwell. Her voice was a banshee's wail. You think this is a game? I opened the door, calm as ever, while she stood there red-faced, clutching her clipboard like a shield. Behind her, Tom and Linda flanked like loyal dogs, their glares sharp but uncertain. You sabotaged the grid, she accused, jabbing a finger at me. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. Prove it, I said. Her eyes narrowed, but she had nothing. No evidence, no witnesses. Just her rage. I handed her a copy of the utility report I'd found, the one exposing her HVAC scam. Maybe you should explain this instead. Her face froze just for a second, before she snatched the paper and tore it in half. This meeting tonight, she hissed. You're finished. The emergency meeting was set for 7 p.m. at the clubhouse, now running on a borrowed generator that growled like an angry beast. Word of my flyers had spread, and neighbors filled the room, their faces a mix of curiosity and fear. Karen took the stage, her voice syrupy with false concern. We're here to address a serious violation, she began, casting a pointed look at me. Mr. Caldwell's reckless actions have endangered our community. She spun a tale of my workshop overloading the grid, causing the blackout, and endangering vulnerable residents. Tom nodded gravely. Linda scribbled furiously. But the room wasn't hers anymore. Mr. Jenkins stood, his cane trembling but his voice steady. What about your HVAC, Karen? Why'd you hide the costs? Murmurs rippled. The young couple Sarah and Mike spoke next, holding up my flyer. Is this true? Sarah asked. Karen's smile tightened, but she deflected, calling the flyer slander. I stood holding a USB drive. Slander? Let's see. I plugged it into the clubhouse projector, and there it was, Karen's emails projected in black and white, detailing her deal with the utility company to bury the HVAC costs. The room gasped. Karen's face drained of color, but she recovered fast. This is fabricated, she snapped, lunging for the projector. Tom grabbed her arm, whispering something, but she shook him off. The crowd was turning. A retired teacher, Mrs. Patel, stood. I trusted you, Karen. We all did. The air crackled with betrayal. I didn't need to say much. The truth was doing the work. But then came the twist I hadn't seen coming. Linda, Karen's loyal scribe, stood, her hands shaking as she held her notebook. I have something to say, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The room fell silent. Linda, the quiet enabler, the one who documented every infraction, was breaking ranks. Karen told me to alter the utility logs, she confessed. She said it was for the community's good, but I kept the originals. She held up a flash drive of her own, her eyes wet with guilt. I'm sorry. The room erupted, shouts, questions, demands. Karen's empire was crumbling, and Linda, of all people, had lit the match. I hadn't expected an ally, least of all her. It wasn't just my fight anymore, it was ours. Karen tried to regain control, her voice shrill. This is a setup. You're all being manipulated. But no one was listening. Neighbors surged forward, demanding answers. Tom slipped out the back, abandoning her. I stayed quiet, letting the chaos unfold. Karen's lies had built her throne, but truth was a sharper blade. As the meeting dissolved into shouts and accusations, I slipped out, my mind already on the next step. The blackout had been my opening salvo, but Karen wasn't done. She'd fight dirtier now, and I needed to be ready. Back home, I checked my workshop, ensuring my generator was ready for whatever came next. The grid was still down, but I felt a spark of hope. Willow Creek was waking up. The clubhouse meeting left Willow Creek fractured. A neighborhood split between those who still feared Karen's wrath and those ready to fight back. By morning, the power was still out, and the air buzzed with tension. I walked my dog, Rusty, at dawn, noticing curtains twitching as neighbors watched me pass. My flyers had done their job, but Karen wasn't one to surrender. Her golf cart was already circling, her face a mask of determination. She'd called an emergency repair crew to the substation claiming vandalism, and I knew she was pointing fingers at me. I wasn't worried about proof, she had none, but her influence ran deep. People like Tom, still loyal despite his retreat, could sway the fence-sitters. I needed to act fast. I spent the morning gathering allies. Mr. Jenkins invited me over for coffee, his kitchen lit by candles. Karen's been skimming dues for years, he said, pulling out old HOA budgets that showed unexplained maintenance fees. Sarah and Mike joined us, their toddler asleep upstairs. We're in, Mike said, his jaw tight. She tried to fine us for our kid's tricycle last month. Linda was the wild card. I found her at her house, still clutching her notebook like a lifeline. I didn't mean to hurt anyone, she said, her voice cracking. Karen made it sound necessary. I didn't trust her fully, but her flash drive was gold. Original utility logs that matched my findings. We had a case, but Karen wasn't fighting with facts. She was fighting with power. By noon, the repair crew confirmed the substation wasn't vandalized, just misconfigured. Power flickered back on, but the damage was done. Karen spun it as my fault, sending an email blast accusing me of domestic terrorism. The term was laughable, but it scared people. I got nervous glances at the mailbox, and a few neighbors stopped returning my waves. Karen was rallying her troops for a final stand, and I knew where. The HOA board election in 2 days. She'd pushed to oust me as a resident and cement her control. I needed a knockout blow, something public, undeniable, and humiliating. I called a meeting of my own, not at the clubhouse but at Mr. Jenkins' backyard, where Karen's spies couldn't lurk. About 20 neighbors showed up, a mix of young families, retirees, and even a few of Karen's former allies. I laid out everything, the emails, the utility logs, the budgets. Sarah, a graphic designer, had made a timeline clear and damning, showing how Karen's scams had drained us for years. She's not just stealing money, I said, my voice steady despite the anger burning in my chest. She's stealing our peace. The group agreed to confront her at the election, armed with evidence. But I had one more card to play, a risky one. I'd found a backdoor in the HOA's financial software, a clunky system Karen barely understood. It tracked every payment, every fine, every special assessment. I spent hours cross-referencing it with Linda's logs, uncovering a pattern. Karen had been funneling small amounts from each resident's dues into a separate account. Not enough to notice individually, but across 200 homes it added up to tens of thousands. I couldn't access the account directly, but I had enough to show intent. I printed the records and prepared for the election. Karen would fight dirty, but I was ready to match her. The election night was electric, the clubhouse packed with every resident in Willow Creek. Karen stood at the podium, her smile polished but brittle. She opened with a speech about community values and restoring order, painting me as a reckless outsider. I waited, letting her dig her hole. When my turn came, I didn't speak. I walked to the projector, plugged in my laptop, and let the numbers tell the story. The room fell silent as the screen showed her secret account, the siphoned funds, the lies. Karen's voice rose, shrill and desperate. This is a lie. He's a criminal. But the evidence was ironclad. Neighbors stood, one by one, demanding answers. Mr. Jenkins called for her resignation. Sarah held up the timeline. Even Tom, her last ally, stayed silent. Then came the twist. Linda, who'd been quiet all night, stood again. There's more, she said, her voice stronger now. She revealed Karen had been planning to sell part of the community's green space to a developer, pocketing a cut. The crowd roared. Karen tried to flee, but the room closed in, a sea of angry faces. I didn't need to say another word. The truth had won. But as I watched Karen's empire collapse, I felt a pang of unease. I'd wanted justice, but this felt like something else, something darker. The crowd's anger was a beast I'd unleashed, and I wasn't sure I could control it. The election night turned into a reckoning. Karen's face, once smug and untouchable, was now a mask of panic as neighbors surrounded her, their voices a chorus of betrayal. The clubhouse felt like a courtroom, with Karen on trial and no one to defend her. I stood at the back, my laptop still glowing with the evidence that had undone her. Mr. Jenkins, Sarah, Mike, and even Linda stood with me, their resolve a quiet fire. But the crowd's anger was growing wilder, less focused. Someone shouted, "She should lose her house." Another yelled, "Call the police." I'd wanted to expose her, not start a mob. I stepped forward, raising my hands. "We need to do this right," I said. "Vote her out, hold her accountable, but let's not become her." The room quieted, but only just. Karen seized the moment, her voice cutting through. "You're all hypocrites," she spat, her eyes wild. "You loved my rules when they kept this place perfect." It was a desperate ploy and it fell flat. The vote was unanimous. Karen was removed as HOA president, effective immediately. A temporary board, Mr. Jenkins, Sarah, and a quiet accountant named Greg, was elected to clean up the mess. Karen stormed out, vowing revenge. I should have felt victorious, but her words lingered. She wasn't wrong about the neighborhood's complicity. They'd let her rule for years, afraid to challenge her. I wondered if I just traded one problem for another. The next morning, Willow Creek felt different. Power was back, but the air was heavy. Neighbors avoided eye contact, unsure how to move forward. Karen's house was dark, her golf cart gone. Rumors spread that she'd left town, but I wasn't so sure. I spent the day helping the new board sort through HOA records, uncovering more of Karen's schemes, fake vendors, inflated contracts, even a consulting fee she'd paid herself. The numbers were staggering, enough to fund a lawsuit. But I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Karen didn't strike me as someone who'd slink away quietly. That night, I got a call from Linda. Her voice was shaky. "Ethan, someone broke into my house." She'd found her back door ajar, her notebook, the one with the original utility logs, gone. I drove over, my stomach twisting. Linda's living room was trashed, papers scattered, but nothing else was taken. It wasn't a random burglary. It was a message. I called Sarah and Mike, who reported strange noises outside their house the night before. Mr. Jenkins found a slashed tire on his car. Karen, or someone loyal to her, was hitting back. I told the group to stay vigilant and installed motion sensor cameras around my property. If she wanted a war, I'd be ready. The next day, I met with the new board to plan. We agreed to hire a lawyer and pursue charges against Karen for fraud. The evidence was overwhelming, but gathering it took time. I spent hours at the clubhouse, cross-referencing bank statements and emails. Neighbors started pitching in, some offering documents, others sharing stories of Karen's bullying. It was cathartic, but it also revealed how deep her control had been. People had lived in fear, silenced by her threats. I realized this wasn't just about money. It was about reclaiming a community, Then came the second twist. While digging through the HOA server, I found a hidden folder labeled contingency. Inside were drafts of letters, all addressed to residents, accusing them of various infractions, fake violations dated for the next year. Karen had planned to keep her scam going, targeting anyone who questioned her. One letter was addressed to me, claiming I'd violated building codes with my workshop. It was a chilling reminder of her ruthlessness. I shared the find with the board, and we agreed to go public, posting the letters online for every resident to see. The response was immediate. Neighbors flooded the HOA's new website with comments, vowing to fight back. Willow Creek was done being afraid. But Karen wasn't gone. Late that night, my cameras caught her, or someone, sneaking around my backyard. A hooded figure too quick to identify left a note taped to my workshop door. "You'll pay for this." My blood ran cold, but I wasn't backing down. I called the police, who took the note as evidence but warned me to stay cautious. Karen was out there plotting her comeback. I doubled down, installing floodlights and reinforcing my locks. The neighborhood was rallying, but the fight wasn't over. Karen had lost her throne, but she was still a predator and I was her prey. Willow Creek was a battlefield now, not of fists but of fear and secrets. Karen's note on my workshop door lingered in my mind, a taunt that kept me up at night. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for everyone she'd hurt. The new HOA board moved fast, filing a lawsuit against Karen for fraud and embezzlement. The evidence, emails, logs, bank records, was airtight, but legal battles were slow and Karen was slippery. She'd vanished from her house, leaving only a for sale sign in her yard. Neighbors whispered she'd fled to a condo downtown, but I knew better. Karen didn't run, she regrouped. I turned my workshop into a war room, walls covered with printouts and timelines. Sarah and Mike helped digitize the evidence, creating a website to keep residents informed. Mr. Jenkins called in favors from old friends at the city, digging up more dirt on Karen's shady deals. Linda, still haunted by her role in Karen's schemes, worked tirelessly to make amends, cross-checking every document for discrepancies. The neighborhood was uniting, but cracks remained. Some residents, still loyal to Karen or just scared of change, resisted. Anonymous letters appeared in mailboxes, calling the new board troublemakers and warning of consequences. I knew Karen's handwriting, even if she tried to disguise it. The police were little help. They called the note on my door a prank, the break-in at Linda's a random act. Without hard proof tying Karen to the harassment, their hands were tied. I wasn't waiting for her next move. I upgraded my security cameras, alarms, even a guard dog for Rusty to pal around with. But Karen was clever. One morning I found my submeter tampered with, wires crossed to make it look like I was stealing power. It was a clumsy job, but it screamed Karen. I fixed it, documented everything, and sent the photos to the board. She was trying to frame me again, but I was one step ahead. The lawsuit gained traction. Our lawyer, a sharp woman named Rachel, uncovered more. Karen had ties to a shady contractor who'd overcharged the HOA for years, splitting the profits with her. The contractor was now under investigation, and Karen's name was all over the paperwork. We leaked the news to the local paper, and Willow Creek became a headline. HOA president accused of stealing thousands from neighbors. The story went viral online, and suddenly Karen wasn't just our problem. She was a public disgrace. But public shaming wasn't enough. I wanted justice, not just headlines. Then came the final twist. Late one night, Mike called me frantic. He'd been digging through the HOA's old security footage, stored on a dusty hard drive in the clubhouse. He found a clip from the night of the blackout, grainy but clear enough. Karen, not me, at the substation tampering with the circuits. She'd staged the outage to pin it on me, but her plan had backfired. The footage was a bombshell. We sent it to Rachel, who added it to the lawsuit. The police finally took notice, issuing a warrant for Karen's arrest. But she was still out there, a ghost haunting our victory. I drove to her condo downtown, not to confront her but to see if she was really gone. The building was sleek, modern, nothing like Willow Creek's cozy charm. Her unit was dark, but a neighbor confirmed she'd been there days ago, ranting about ungrateful neighbors. I left, feeling her shadow over me. Back home I found another note, this time slipped under my front door. You can't win. My blood boiled, but I didn't react. I handed it to the police, who were now actively searching for her. The neighborhood rallied, organizing watch groups and sharing updates online. Karen's reign was over, but her ghost lingered, a reminder of how fragile trust could be. As the lawsuit moved forward, Willow Creek began to heal. The new board slashed dues, fixed the budget, and planned a community picnic to rebuild trust. I helped rewire the clubhouse, a small act of redemption. But late at night in my workshop, I'd stare at the grid map I'd used to plunge the neighborhood into darkness. I'd fought for justice, but I'd also broken rules, crossed lines. Was I any better than Karen? The question gnawed at me, but I pushed it down. We'd won for now. The fight had changed me, changed us all. Willow Creek wasn't perfect, but it was ours again. The hunt for Karen became Willow Creek's obsession. Her condo was empty, her golf cart abandoned at a storage unit. The police had her warrant, but she was a phantom, slipping through every net. I couldn't shake the feeling she was watching, waiting for a chance to strike. My workshop, once a sanctuary, felt like a bunker. I kept my cameras on, my new dog Max growling at every shadow. Neighbors were on edge too. Sarah found a dead bird on her porch, Mike's car was keyed, and Mr. Jenkins swore he saw someone lurking near his garage. Karen was gone, but her spite lingered, poisoning the air. The lawsuit was our lifeline. Rachel, our lawyer, built a case that could bury Karen: fraud, embezzlement, even vandalism for the substation stunt. The security footage was our ace, showing her tampering with the grid to frame me. But legal victories were slow, and Willow Creek needed closure now. The new board worked overtime, refunding overcharged dues and auditing every contract Karen had touched. Residents started opening up, sharing stories of her cruelty: a fine for a kid's lemonade stand, a lien on a widow's home for a late payment. Each story fueled our resolve, but also our fear. If Karen could do this for years, what was she capable of now? I threw myself into protecting the neighborhood. I upgraded the clubhouse's security, installed new locks, and taught Sarah and Mike how to monitor the cameras. Linda, still wrestling with guilt, became our archivist, cataloging every piece of evidence. She found a hidden email from Karen to the shady contractor, hinting at a plan to sell off more community land if the HOA election went her way. It was another nail in her coffin, but it also showed how far she'd been willing to go. I couldn't help but admire her audacity, even as I hated her for it. She'd ruled like a dictator, and we'd been her subjects. One night a breakthrough came. A neighbor's cousin, a private investigator, tracked Karen to a motel on the edge of town. She'd been using cash, staying off the grid, but she'd slipped up, using her credit card for a gas station purchase. The police raided the motel, but she was gone, leaving behind a burner phone and a stack of HOA letterhead. The phone had text to an unknown number, vague but threatening. "They'll regret it. Finish what we started." I didn't know who her accomplice was, but it chilled me. Karen wasn't alone. I shared the news with the board, and we tightened security, urging neighbors to lock their doors and report anything strange. The community picnic was our attempt to reclaim normalcy. We held it in the green space Karen had tried to sell, a defiant middle finger to her legacy. Kids played, neighbors laughed, and for a moment Willow Creek felt like home again. I manned the grill, flipping burgers, while Sarah and Mike handed out flyers about the lawsuit's progress. Mr. Jenkins told stories of the neighborhood's early days, before Karen's reign. Linda even smiled, helping kids paint signs that read, "Our Willow Creek." But as the sun set, I noticed a figure at the edge of the park, watching. Too far to see clearly, but my gut screamed Karen. I told Mike, who alerted the police, but the figure was gone before they arrived. Back home I found another note, this time inside my mailbox. "You think you've won?" My cameras hadn't caught anyone, which meant whoever left it was smarter than before. I didn't tell the board. They were already stretched thin. Instead, I doubled my efforts, scouring the HOA server for more clues. I found a draft of a letter Karen had never sent, addressed to the city, proposing a new community fee to fund her projects. It was dated the day of the blackout. She'd been planning her next move even as her world collapsed. I sent it to Rachel, who said it could strengthen our case for criminal intent. The neighborhood was healing, but scars remained. I saw it in the way people locked their cars, checked their windows. Karen's shadow loomed, a reminder that power, once tasted, is hard to relinquish. I wasn't the same either. I'd fought for justice, but I'd also played dirty, cutting the grid, hacking the server. I told myself it was necessary, but the line between right and wrong was blurry now. Willow Creek was free, but at what cost? As I sat in my workshop, Max snoring at my feet, I wondered if Karen's final move was still coming, and if I'd be ready when it did. The police caught Karen 3 weeks later, hiding in a friend's cabin 2 towns over. She'd been planning her comeback, hoarding cash and drafting new schemes on stolen HOA letterhead. The arrest was quiet, no dramatic chase, just handcuffs and a squad car. The news spread like wildfire through Willow Creek, and for the first time in months, I felt the weight lift. Neighbors gathered at the clubhouse, not for a fight but to celebrate. Sarah and Mike brought champagne, Mr. Jenkins gave a speech, and even Linda laughed, her guilt finally easing. The lawsuit was still ongoing, but with Karen in custody, it felt like a formality. We'd won. I walked home that night, Max trotting beside me, the stars bright above Willow Creek. The neighborhood was different now, imperfect but alive. The new board had slashed dues, repaired the clubhouse, and started a community garden in the green space Karen had tried to sell. Residents were talking again. Not whispering in fear but sharing ideas, plans, dreams. I'd helped make that happen, but I carried my own scars. Cutting the grid had been my rebellion, a spark that ignited change, but it also reminded me how easy it was to cross a line. I'd fought a bully by becoming one, if only for a moment. The next morning, I got a call from Rachel. Karen had taken a plea deal, 2 years in prison, restitution for the stolen funds. It wasn't enough, but it was something. The contractor she'd worked with was facing his own charges, and the city was auditing every HOA in the county, thanks to our case. Willow Creek had started a ripple, exposing how power could corrupt even the smallest communities. I thanked Rachel, hung up, and went to my workshop. The grid map was still pinned to the wall, a reminder of the night I'd plunged us into darkness. I took it down, folded it, and tucked it away. It wasn't a trophy, it was a lesson. Months passed and Willow Creek grew stronger. The picnic became a monthly tradition, kids' laughter filling the green space. Sarah and Mike started a neighborhood watch, not out of fear but pride. Linda wrote a book about her role in Karen's schemes, donating the proceeds to the community. Mr. Jenkins, now board president, asked me to join, but I declined. I was an electrician, not a leader. My place was fixing things, wires, lights, broken trust. I rewired half the neighborhood's homes for free, a quiet apology for the chaos I'd helped unleash. One evening, as I walked Rusty and Max, I saw Karen's old house. New owners had moved in, a young family with a swing set in the yard. The for sale sign was gone, and so was her ghost. I thought about her, alone in her cell, stripped of the control she'd craved. I didn't hate her anymore. She'd been a predator, but also a product of a system that let her thrive. Willow Creek had been complicit, too, in its silence. We'd all learned something about power, about community, about standing up. I kept one memento, the note she'd left in my mailbox. "You think you've won?" I didn't frame it or burn it. I kept it in a drawer, a reminder that victory isn't permanent. Freedom takes work, vigilance, courage. Willow Creek was free, but it was up to us to keep it that way. I looked at my dogs, at the lights glowing in every home, at the stars above. We'd been in darkness, but we'd found our way out. Together.